So I'd like to introduce Mark Dudman, a senior risk consultant here at DriveRisk, and he's going to be giving us some material today on uncovering your on-road risk with a pilot program. So I will switch my camera off and hand it over to you, Mark.
Very good. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Owen. I'll kill my camera too, so no people have to sit there watching me. All right. So, look, thanks everyone. As Owen said, welcome this afternoon. Really appreciate everyone taking time out to listen in. And I wanted to run through really just to cover what a pilot is and how engaging with DriveRisk in a pilot will help you uncover on-road risk. But most importantly, the driver's risks that will, once they're exposed, will be reduced, and that's really what matters in terms of running a driver safety pilot. From a financial perspective, byproduct of reduced risk really equates to healthy, profitable outcomes for your business. So I hope everyone gets a lot out of this, and as Owen said, please fire your questions through, and we'll get to them either immediately with Owen answering straight back, or I'll hit those at the end. So thanks very much. So almost every task that's performed in a work environment has had a risk assessment completed, and it is one of the critical elements to providing a safe workplace environment for all employees. We know commercial driving is high risk. And I guess from our point of view, we always ask the question, why is there not more focus on performing risk assessment on the driving task, or more specifically, the drivers and the driver's behaviour? The general consensus is we do risk assessments because we are uncertain of an outcome. And this allows us to learn and implement processes that make us and everyone around safer. On-road risk assessments are no different, but when you consider the outcomes, there is a huge difference between someone tripping on a cracked pathway around the office to a driver taking risk and having a collision. Uncovering on-road risk really does matter and will save lives. So I'm regularly told when you're actually able to go and visit people that it's too hard to do risk assessments on drivers as they drive like champions, when the driver trainer's in on a ride-along day, unable to do it obviously due to COVID restrictions these days. Waste of time, drivers don't listen and never change. Some even say, and I've heard this a couple of times, which blows my mind, don't care as long as they get the job done, and any other excuse. Doing driver risk assessments is critical, and with the right technology is very simple. So, I pay no credence to those types of statements. And realistically, it's based on simple lack of an ability to capture the risks and a failure more than likely of the technology being used to provide factual behaviour analysis that has relevant correlation to risk reduction. Try saying that 3 times fast. Risk assessing drivers does work, and by following the processes we instill will change behaviour. You do need to undertake a pilot program of a system such as DriveCam, no matter what your freight task. We can add additional equipment like a Drive Alert Plus, which is our active fatigue and distraction monitoring device. Realistically, it's really just for long haul type fleets or drivers that are going into that critical overnight area. This has critical alerts and a seat vibration function for those specific engagements only. You can certainly add fleet tracking for vehicle activity, location, and trip history information. We can also include like a thing that plugs into ECU, which we call a CAN coupler device, and that can provide engine management data metrics. But the first step is always the hardest. But once you commit to a pilot program, you'll achieve significant reduced on-road risk and many tangible benefits, certainly increased profits, safer drivers, and saved lives. And that's probably the most critical out of all of these things. So just because you don't or you haven't identified risk doesn't mean they don't exist. And that's one of the things where I think, from a transport perspective, we leave ourselves a little bit exposed, and if you turn your attention to statistics. We know from the data released by the ABS or the Australian Bureau of Statistics and the recent NTI report, that commercial driving is high risk, and the probability of risk being present in your fleet is realistically undeniable. Risk assessments are generally completed due to uncertainty and the probability of a negative outcome, so you need to have the capacity to accurately assess the risk. A pilot allows a company to perform risk assessments on a select pool of their drivers in a non-disruptive, non-biased manner. This enables you to have a thorough understanding of identification of all the risk present in your driver group. From the identification, that comes the evaluation process and the prioritization from your highest risk down to your lowest risk. And our online platform helps manage the data and the risk profiles of each individual driver, implementing steps that we recommend, both in system usage and driver interaction. And the driver interaction is really the critical part. If you're not talking to your drivers, then, it's flogging a dead horse, to be brutally honest. Now we measure the success, and we don't just limit this to the driver risk profile. We measure the coaches or the supervisors who are tasked with the day-to-day system management. If a coach is failing, then we can't expect a driver to succeed. And that's the holistic approach, which forms the basis of an inclusive safety program. If you don't have that holistic system that looks at all risks, you are just picking what we would consider as the low-hanging fruit. Excuse me. Now, picking the low-hanging fruit might give you some level of achievement, but by taking such a narrow approach means you will only discover a small portion of the risk. And this generally, it's setting you up for failure, to be brutally honest. Alleviating that feeling of uncertainty that your drivers are not taking risks will give you comfort that you are making your drivers safer, leading to greater safety compliance. Not only do collisions reduce, but equally important, your driver's exposure to risk and at-fault incidents will also reduce. All on-road risk matters, but don't just hit those easy targets. Things like, well, your truck's turned up and it's a bit munted. Yep, okay, you've got a problem. So how do you investigate that to find out what the root cause of the collision or the incident might have been? The problem is you can use telematic data, but that's going to provide you with zero risk context in terms of, what was your driver doing or what was going on outside the vehicle, and all those other factors that come into play. So understanding the broad spectrum of all the risks. In fact, if you consider what we do from a drive cam perspective, there's 60 or more than 60 risky or collision leading behaviours that we analyse in the context of an incident being captured. So it can certainly be frightening, but from this comes the ability to implement solutions that change driver behaviour, and that'll lead to reduction of on-road risk. Now, I've had some incidents where people have asked me to turn off the system after a month, certainly not because they didn't like the system, just because they didn't like what they were seeing and had to sort of think about the context in how they were going to deal with that. But that's all part of what we do as well. And it's not about targeting specific drivers. Our analysis is it's universally unbiased. The reviewers, we've got a pretty big team of reviewers. They don't know who the individual drivers are. They all rating aligned with the severity of the outcome. So all drivers are measured and risk assessed equally. So knowing your risk target, that's one of the key criteria of being able to do what we do. Only then you can accurately implement strategies to mitigate the risk. And as I said before, the main issue in transport is a lot of people seem to fail in that ability to discover the risk. And this is why a pilot is crucial, because it takes care of that discovery process. And once you have the target of what you're trying to change, you really are refining your mitigation strategies. On-road risk has many, many variables, many you can't control, which also limits your ability to plan. But one thing for certain is doing a pilot will provide you with a range of accurate knowledge of the multiple risk-based habits and behaviours your drivers are displaying. Once you know, it allows you the opportunity to implement correct strategies to reduce the risk and better control, some of the variables that go on out there. Obviously, third party at fault or people that don't know how to drive around trucks. Unfortunately, there's not a lot you can control about that, but at least you've got that defensible position in place. Data, obviously, if you don't have the data, your knowledge on how to change things is very limited, and you're not going to know the source or the root cause of where your risk is coming from. And you need to take the time to, experiment and explore based on data insights that a pilot's going to provide you with. If you don't have the data insights, you're going to be very limited to really provide positive risk reduction outcomes. And that's one of the key criteria that we are able to provide, is the amount of data. We are an extremely data-rich company where we can provide you with, an infinite amount of information based around on-road risk. And that's what it's here is to do, is to mitigate that and change people's behaviour. And I guess the good old saying is, it won't happen to me. And that's really largely based around the lack of that data. And that limits your ability to conceptualise intervention strategies. Again, it's a game changer, the pilot. It allows you to manage your expectations. And that's based on fact, not just suspicion that something could and probably will happen. And as I mentioned earlier, transport is risky. And if you're running a fleet of commercial vehicles, you are exposed to risk. And a pilot's going to uncover all of the risky behaviours. And COR, if we think about chain of responsibility, it states it's your obligation to take an active approach to risk reduction. Our solution does a risk assessment on every single driver on every single trip. A driver trainer can sit in a truck a few times per year. And we all know drivers are on their best behaviour when the driver trainer's in there. It's simply not effective. Realistically, if you put that down to an efficiency percentage, I think I did something some time ago, and it was around about 3% effective per driver, just purely because of the limitations of availability of a driver trainer to spend time and effective time with your drivers. A pilot uncovers all the risks, conscious and subconscious. And as we know, behavior is mostly governed by subconscious. I think I did some behavior webinars last year, and it was around 95% of the things that we do are governed by the subconscious. So drivers don't actively go out there and take risks. They just don't consciously know that they are actually taking risks. Our pilots' insights are going to provide you with the knowledge, the variable and controllable and uncontrollable. And as I said, while you can't control the uncontrollable, at least you now can better manage them through this newly established understanding of your controllable risk. And a DriveCam pilot means you are now armed with a defensible position to lawfully manage favourable outcomes. And that's a really strong area of what we're trying to achieve as well, is you need to be able to defend yourself, lawfully, to provide and to show under, the COR that you have been taking an active role in reducing your on-road risk. Once you start to, get that position where you're reducing your driver's risk profiles, your collision likelihood threshold of each and every driver is going down as well, which means you're going to be less likely to be exposed to an at-fault collision. It's a simple numeric ratio. And I guess best part of all is you're not going to get that unexpected hit. The hit to your back pocket, really. If you don't have that understanding, the negatives that can come from those types of, wasn't ready for that type of hit, can really cost a lot. If you've got an authority, an NHVR or police, whatever, coming to have do a bit of a scrutiny on you, it can be certainly time consuming, can be very expensive, both in man hours and in physical costs. And potentially could end up grounding your fleet. So running a pilot really makes perfect sense. Even if you don't like what you see, you can show your actually taking some active steps to mitigate your risk profile, and that's going to give you that defensible position. So I'm not going to bang on too much about COR, but we all know that COR specifies that we've got to take an active approach to safety mitigation. NHVR's put in a process based largely around these 4 pillars. And the 4 pillars, obviously, number 1, set your company up for safety program, set policies, get the right people involved, and make sure the goals are clearly outlined. And outcome expectations as well. And that's part of what we do from a pilot perspective. We actually make sure that those goals and expectations are set prior to us going into any pilot program, so we have something to attain and measure against. Identify, understand your risks. So now you've been in the discussion of the challenges of capturing the on-road risk, and this is where technology steps in to really fill that uncertainty void. You need to implement safety system, and only DriveCam really covers all the on-road risk. Once you have the system in place, obviously you're now empowered to make some informed decisions about your mitigation processes. Ongoing monitoring, obviously your safety assurance processes, making sure that your effectiveness of your safety program, measure your risk reduction, be dynamic so you can continually improve how your system is managed. Best part about that is the aspect of running a successful SMS program is, DriveRisk has client success managers, and their job is wholly and solely is to guide you on how to best manage the system efficiently, effectively, and work on achieving the improvement goals and expectation outcomes that we're going to work through. And pillar 4, communication, promote safety using an SMS, and it's all based around communication. And that's the fundamental aspect of an SMS, but it's also the fundamental aspect of DriveCam is to communicate with your drivers. And to be honest, they're the critical personnel that are directly affected by risk. So you've got to include them and coach them to be safer. And it's, beat around the bush, it's your responsibility, it's your obligation under chain of responsibility. And that's where DriveCam really aids your COR compliance. So when you consider a safety technology partner, consideration needs to be based around the ability to have context to captured events. Unlike telematics devices or a seeing eye device, where limited comprehension of context is applied, nor is there any mitigation process factored into what they're delivering to prevent future occurrences, where DriveCam provides comprehensive mitigation detail to prevent repeat behaviours. And that's one of the key criteria we actually judge our coaches on, and I'll get to that in a little bit. It is critical to ensure what you are capturing is acted on, and this means aligning outcomes with policy. And I've saying that, some systems leave you hung out to dry, and this is very relevant to on-road risk mitigation. There is no value to a company simply capturing events and doing nothing with them. In fact, to be brutally honest, under COR perspective, I would suggest that it's worse knowing you have risk concerns and not acting on them than not knowing at all. Expanding your comprehension of all the risks will give you a much clearer understanding of where to start your risk mitigation program, but also where to continue. It'll get rid of that uncertainty around your risk mitigation processes. So the process, I guess, it's all about efficiency. And, people say, they don't have time and bits and pieces like this. Well, by having the driver in control of their own destiny, then the driver's the first and foremost going to make those decisions, and it's up to the coach to then guide them along. They're all professional drivers, so if we treat them like professionals with giving them empower them with the education, then obviously everyone wins. And it's all about designing around enhancing driver safety focus, and it needs to be efficient for it to be effective. But the driver needs to make that first, I guess the first part in the active role in the mitigation process. And if your driver doesn't understand the technology, why is it being piloted, then you're starting off on the wrong foot. And that's where, I guess, prior to us doing anything, We engage with all of the drivers that are going to be involved in the driver pool in part of a pilot. In fact, even if we proceed into implementation, nothing goes into a truck unless we've had a driver induction that we've run with your driving team, because as I said, this system is for them, and if they don't understand it, or they just get into a truck and there's in their eyes it's a camera. It's not a camera, this is an event recorder, but in their eyes it's a camera. They're going to get their back up and they're going to fight against it. So we need to make sure they understand exactly what's going on. So once they're inducted, we start the discovery process. That's with in-cab alerts. We're making them conscious that risky behaviour is being detected. The next step is obviously produce a 12-second video file only. So that's the only element that is captured on the driver. It's a 12-second video of that particular non-conformance. From the video, we review and analyse what has been recorded. And this is to add any of the context that may be involved. What was your driver doing leading up to and during an event? Was the driver undertaking any risky behaviours, or what was going on around the truck as well that could also contribute to the event? Third-party vehicles, road, weather conditions, etc. Whoops, apologies for that. We've gone a bit too far there. And then we put, that context and behaviour comments are actually added to the video file that you get on your homepage, including a risk score. And that's really critical too, because then that way you can prioritise what you're doing or where you focus, first and foremost on the high risk stuff, and then work your way down. And this is all part of what we call a closed loop coaching workflow. And that's the essential element of the process to one, ensure that you're adhering to chain of responsibility and you have total visibility of what is being captured, what's being coached, and how your coaching efforts are actually tracking. And this allows both yourselves and upper management to measure your mitigation efforts and be able to report to authorities on your safety improvement programs. So it's really good part of that COR obligation that you must be able to, management needs to be able to report on how you're progressing. So the graphical here represents the impact of when we turned on the audible alerts, and this happened mid last year. The active pool of devices in this data set was 150,000 MVAI audible enabled units globally. So DriveCam is a massive global organisation, or Lytx, I should say. DriveCam is the actual device, and we're part of this global entity as well. So as you can see in the earlier weeks, whilst the data showed genuine reduction in the risk, and it was consistent and largely acceptable, because you'll want to see trends going in the right direction. But around week 25, we turned on the MVAI with the in-cab audible alerts, and you see there was a very sharp and dramatic reduction in recorded or captured risky behaviours from drivers in the test pool. Now, these alerts were specific to just mobile phone, smoking, inattentiveness, no seatbelt, and food and drink, and they're all leading, major collision leading risks that drivers undertake. So they're things that we have focused on, or Lytx has focused on in the first output of the machine vision and artificial intelligence processes. And what's most pleasing about the rapid rate of improvement, or the rapid reduction of on-road risk, is that it's been sustained and continued an overall downward trend. Now, we do know that spikes occur. As you can see, there's a few little spikes up and down, but if we see them, we can mitigate these immediately through active coaching, and the trends will then, continue on the downward risk result. So how we go about the implementation process, or the pilot process, it's about the methodology used by the DriveRisk team, and that ensures the client gets the full support and experience, even in a compressed timeline. It's our role to demonstrate not only the capabilities of the product, the hardware and the software, but how we really partner with the client to work together towards, that overall risk reduction. As the pilot progresses through each phase, and you can see all the phases there on a timeline graphical, the pilot project manager will engage with various subject matters matter experts, both in our staff and within the client's staff area as well, from your HR to your driver trainers to your operational managers, all of these different things. And the phase outcomes are realised on time and really to the requisite standard that we're wanting to achieve in terms of goals and outcome. Now, obviously, the client is expected to share their goals, and as well as define some of the, I guess, the achievements that we want to do, but we got to make sure that these are measurable. And that's where, I guess from my point of view, being the risk consultant, we work with the client to ensure they've got to be specific. We've got to make sure that they're measurable. We've got to make sure that the goals are attainable through what the system can and can't achieve. It's no use putting down, hypotheticals that it's not going to be directly impacted by what we're doing. So we need it to be realistic, and can it be achieved within the time frame that we set for the pilot? The system is set up really aggressively in the first instance because we want to show really what's going on out there in terms of the full risk exposure platform. The client success team then works pretty diligently with the newly trained coaches to identify, narrow that down, and really focus on some specifics of the driver behaviour. And most pilots see a pretty significant reduction in risk as a result of this high engagement and the accelerated approach. And, as I said before, most people are pretty shocked upon what they see at first sight. We've had some of our recent pilots, which I'll give you some results shortly. They actually put it into what they thought was their best fleet, and it was a bit of an eye-opening shock to them as well. So, for large clients, we use this similar approach too. So even though this is really a pilot program outlay, if we're doing multiple depots or larger fleets, there's no use going, let's do 500 bang, and people then are just swamped. So we go through this very systematic program and roll that out to get maximum effectiveness and really the high successful risk reduction practices, quickly adopted across, multiple depots or states or whatever it may be, business units. So one of the recent pilots I was involved in said, I now know things I didn't know yesterday about my drivers, and drivers I thought had no risk issues are now on the radar. So, uncovering that risk that's really hidden is an eye-opener for even some seasoned campaigners that have been in the business for a long time, and it really is a bit of a slap in the face sometimes. You don't really expect that you guys are out there taking the risk that they do. Now, I'm just going to let you have a few seconds just to sort of have a look through this. This is actually a screenshot of our homepage dashboard that you get. So once you're involved in a pilot, this is what you'll see. Obviously, I've blocked out coaches' names and drivers' names and depot groups, so you can have all of those things. But what it really does is it's quite explicit in the context of how you're traveling in terms of your risk exposure. Your driver's down the bottom left-hand corner there. So we want to map your 5 most riskiest drivers and what percentage of risk they actually are attributing to your total drive pool team. So as you can see there, we've got 5 drivers and they're making up 22% of the total risk. So there's 42 drivers in this pool. So 5 of them are making up 22%. Now, I've been involved in a pilot that had 55 drivers, and 5 drivers made up 63% of the risk. So it can fluctuate. This wasn't actually a pilot, so they've been in there a fair bit longer, and the risk has certainly plateaued a little bit. But you can see the trends. People have some spikes, but generally speaking, things you want to be going down in the right direction. But what we also want to look at is how the coaches are progressing. So if the coaches, as I said earlier, if the coaches are failing to coach their team, then you can't expect good outcomes for your drivers as well. Now, some of the things that I take special note there is with notes. So if you see right at the very end of that column, that means that these guys are doing really well. There's a few that are 100%, a couple in the high 80s and a couple in the low to mid 80%. Putting convex on a coaching event means if something was to go and questions were being asked of you, you can pull out this information and show that you have taken an active approach and you have coached a driver, and here's the information you discuss. And we also encourage them, coaches, to put in there how they actually, or what the responses was for the driver as well. So that's really critical. And then down the bottom, what are your highest behaviors in terms of what's being captured out there on the road? So as you can see, there's, driver unbelted's the worst, following distance, cornering speed, following distance, ER obstruction. Now that can be a number of different things, whether the lens is blurry or someone's got a sun visor down or whatever it may be, but there's a few things around that, but that's really down to your driver education. So as I said before, it's a holistic approach. We want everyone to be able to look at a snapshot and go, how am I tracking in terms of my risk? And the ease of and the efficiency of the program is we want it all there at a fingertip. And most of these things are like hyperlinks. You click on something, it'll actually take you into that detailed data area. So, I won't dwell too much on that, but that's just to show you exactly what you're going to achieve from signing up for a pilot and the information that you've got at your fingertips as soon as you log into the system. So the data that you're going to see in the next is actually from a recent pilot. The risky behaviour captured information is real. Risk reduction was absolutely fantastic, to be honest. It was really, really incredible. And I've got some information here about how the drivers actually reacted, and that's, it's just undeniable. The driver's reaction, because we include them in this process, is really what you want to see. So driver X agreed that his behaviour is a habitual occurrence, but he didn't realise how serious it was until he had seen all the video clips. So that's encouraging. But it also reinforces what we say. Drivers don't go out there to actively take risks, but they don't consciously know that they're doing it until they physically see it. Driver X's coachable drive score improved by 81% and his general attitude and openness improved significantly. Driver X mentioned that the first coaching session was an eye-opener and a huge lesson learned. He believes that every driver should and needs to see their bad driving habits played back to them as a lesson which can potentially save their and someone else's lives. Now, that type of feedback from a driver is absolutely, it's just amazing, and because we involve the driver in this process the whole way, there's no secrets. It's all about them. They actually feel engaged in it. And once they get that engagement, I mean, this guy, 81% reduction in his risk alone. So this is over a 9-week period, and I've got a little bit more information, which I'll jump onto. So this is actually their stats. So as you can see, reviewed events goes up. So there's this huge spike, which is what we class as the discovery process. Now, over the 9-week period, obviously your reviewed events are going to continue to go up because obviously everything gets captured on an ongoing basis, and the more you increase the timeframes, it's going to continue to that amount of reviewed events will continue to go up. But what we see is over that same period, yes, we had that massive spike, but 93% reduction over the same period of coachable events. So that's coachable events that from the review actually have behaviours or risky behaviours, or even what we class as collision leading behaviours that we've actually seen in the process. So a 93% reduction is absolutely astounding. It's massive. And then the third column, the risky events. So this is this is where you're getting things that are getting that risk score. Not everything is going to get a risk score. Let's say, for instance, not wearing a seatbelt. Yes, it's a coachable event because it's the law. We want you to wear a seatbelt. But in terms of causing a collision, it's not going to do that. So we don't give it a risk event, or a risk score, I should say. But it's certainly a risky behaviour for the driver, because in the event of a collision, a seatbelt, is potentially going to save their lives. And as we saw from the driver's comments on the previous slide, educating your drivers on their specifics gives the driver that opportunity, one, to comprehend his severity of his actions, but two, change behaviour and their attitude to risk. And that's where you need that mechanism to capture risk, and then you work with your drivers to make them safer. So this type of data we provide, all of our clients on a monthly basis, just to show them how they're trending. As well. But during a pilot, we do a mid-pilot review and then an end-of-pilot review, because we want to make sure that we're progressing along very well. But also, if we've hit some pretty good metrics, let's tighten up the metrics a little bit further and really push the bounds in terms of how far we can really get that risk reduction to move in the right direction. So the pilot program, it has broad benefits within transport business. Obviously the clear benefits, reduce collision rates, and that's immediately going to improve your cash flow. Not paying for unscheduled repairs of yours or a third-party vehicle. But considering a write-off of a truck, that's a massive hit to the hip pocket. High excess, and your premiums are going to skyrocket in subsequent years as well. Reducing risky driving behaviour, it does considerably save money. If you think about, harsh braking and harsh acceleration, they chew fuel burn, like no other activity. So if you're changing your drivers' harsh driving habits, you're actually going to achieve anything, and this is globally reviewed and measured, anything from a 3 to 11% reduction in your fuel burn alone, just by changing that one habit. But I'm not going to sort of do the maths, because everyone's fuel bills are differently. But within a 4-month pilot program, you are going to generate, enough to bankroll the system for 12 months. So in other words, you're generating profit for 8 months of the year purely out of a 4-month pilot program, and that's ongoing. Aggressive driving obviously will add additional costs to your scheduled maintenance, extra wear and tear, brake pads, tyres, engine life, all of these things that are going to show a significant improvement over time. Obviously, you're not going to see those over a 4-month pilot program, but in terms of the life of say a few years, you're going to see a definite improvement and significant sort of profits coming from changing driver behaviour. We always run comprehensive return on investment calculators, and that will show it in clear numbers, and that's using your data as well. So we do that before we go into a pilot program. We ask the client to provide specific data. Now we average about a positive 3.6 ROI. So that means for every dollar you spend, you're actually getting a cash return of $3.60. Now that's pure profit. That's cash flow. That's stuff you can reinvest into your business. Increase pay conditions, put on more staff. I've been questioning whether to even say this one, take a holiday, but at the moment, let's just probably pitch a tent in your backyard, because thanks COVID, that's about all we can do. But it gives you that ability to start to look at your profit and your cash flow a lot more freely, because you're not going to have these massive hits coming along on a regular basis. So, running a pilot, it certainly takes a bold step to admit that you have risk issues and you need to get rid of the uncertainty of the mitigation process. And let's not beat around the bush. If you run a transport fleet, you have risk. And just because you haven't seen it or it hasn't been captured doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It simply does. A pilot on a portion of your fleet is going to give you the data insights to make informed decisions, where to improve, where to focus your training efforts and your training dollars. Running a pilot with DriveRisk and the technology products that we supply will start you and your company on the road to get great risk results. And if you'd like to know more, there's my details there. Otherwise, look us up, DriveRisk, on the internet. Feel free to reach out, shoot me some emails, jump onto our info, jump onto our website, because there is a lot of detail. All of our webinars that we've done over the years are also on there as well. But thank you so much for your time. And I'll sort of try to bash through it fairly quickly, but really appreciate everyone's time. We'll throw it open if there's any questions to Owen now, coming through on the questions field, and we'll see if we can answer them So thanks again.